You know, these MAGAs are constantly being played for fools by the guy they voted for. But of course, they're far too stupid to realize it. The latest is this no tax on tips provision that was just passed unanimously by the Senate. Now, these MAGAs are out there running around today claiming some big victory. You know, promises made, promises kept garbage. So let's talk about that, shall we? First of all, if you don't make tips, if you're an hourly worker or a salaried worker, why would you even give a shit? This doesn't even affect you at all. That's number one. Well, of course, the reason why these MAGAs are out there, celebrating this no tax on tips, supposedly no tax on tips provision being passed, even though they may not themselves benefit from it, is because this is all a game to them. This is team sports. That's all this is. And when their side, when their guy, their cult leader gets some sort of a win, they have to celebrate it. They have to cheer it, because that's what you do when you're a mindless drone, and this is all just entertainment. It's a combination of entertainment and team sports. That's what this is for these people. But let's get to the actual issue of this, because this is where they're being completely played for the fools that they are. First of all, this no tax on tips only applies to cash tips. Here's an article. I'll show you. I'll link this article. The U.S. Senate on Monday. Can't read. I even with these glasses, I have actually a new prescription I need to get filled. Not that you give a shit. Anyway, the U.S. Senate on May 20th, which was yesterday, unexpectedly passed a bill to create a new tax deduction on tips. The bill, introduced by douchebag Ted Cruz, was brought up for a voice vote by Senator Jackie Rosen, Democrat of Nevada. It passed with unanimous consent. The deduction, here's the important part, MAGA, the deduction would only apply to cash tips. That's it. So if you work at you're a waitress or waiter and you work at a restaurant, and you have a customer who leaves you a tip on their credit card, as most people do, this doesn't apply to that tip. It only applies to cash. So why does this play MAGAs for fools so hard? Well, because, as I alluded to, most people nowadays don't pay in cash. Most people don't even carry cash. And so they're not paying, for the most part, tips in cash. They're paying it on any number of apps or credit card or whatever, but they're not paying cash. And if they're not tipping these people in cash, then this exemption, this no tax on tips, doesn't apply. So right off the bat, it doesn't apply to most tips. On top of that, it's well known in service industries where people, for the most part, don't even report their cash tips anyway, because there's no record of cash tips. And so there's nothing being reported to the IRS, right? When you get paid through your employer, the employer sends that information, how much you've been paid, to the federal government. Well, that doesn't happen on tips paid in cash. So the federal government is never informed about that money. So people never withhold taxes on cash tips. So this wouldn't, even for the small amount of tips that are actually paid in cash, this largely is meaningless, because people already aren't paying taxes on their cash tips. It's a freaking joke. On top of that, a lot of people who work on tips don't make a whole hell of a lot of money anyway. And a lot of people who make their money on tips, the money they make, they don't really pay taxes on anyway because they don't even make more than the standard deduction, a lot of them. So for so many reasons, this is just a joke. It does virtually nothing. And the whole reason this came about, let's remember, is because Donald Trump desperately wanted to win the election and stay out of prison. And so he was making ridiculous promises to everybody. And one of the promises was this no tax on tip crap that he made in Nevada, because there's a lot of service industry people in Nevada, who, who live on tips. And he wanted to buy their votes. And so he made this promise. And a lot of those people voted for him because of that. And don't discount that. I know a lot of people say, oh, they just voted for him because they're racists and bigots, or they're cultists, and all that's true for a lot of people. But there's also a lot of people who voted for Donald Trump because he made them specific promises that would benefit them. And a lot of people voted for Donald Trump based on this specific promise, along with many other ridiculous specific promises he made. But now they're going to find out, and they're probably celebrating right now because, they don't understand that this actually does nothing, but they will figure it out eventually when they're not saving any damn money. And then what will happen? Will they blame Trump? Will they blame Republicans for lying to them to get their vote? I don't know. But they are getting screwed. They're getting absolutely nothing from this. What else did I want to say? Oh, yeah. And let's just talk, generally speaking, about the idea of taking groups of people based on how they make their income and saying, oh, well, you don't have to pay taxes, but you still do have to pay taxes, right? Because this is only a carve out for people who make their money from tips. And as I explained, it's a friggin' joke. But just theoretically speaking, why should people who make money from tips, why should they get to pay less in federal taxes than someone who works an hourly job, maybe, and who are also low income? Of course, not everybody who makes a living on tips is low income. Some people do quite well, but most people don't. Most people who work on tips are low income, but there's a lot of low income people who are salaried and they have a really shit salary, or they're hourly workers. Why should someone stocking shelves at Walmart continue to have to pay taxes while someone who earns tips doesn't have to pay taxes? Why is that fair? And again, the whole tips thing is a friggin' joke. So they're actually not going to really be paying any less in taxes. But just as a theoretical matter, why is that fair? Why is it fair for this group of people not to have to pay taxes, but this group of people still get screwed? It's not fair. But this is what politicians do, especially, scumbags like Donald Trump, who just wanted to stay out of prison. He makes all these promises. And by the way, as I said, this passed with unanimous consent. Every single senator supported this. And they all know it's a friggin' joke. They all know it's going to do nothing. And why do they all go along with it? Well, obviously Republicans went along with it because they have to support their cult leader, and they have to pretend that he's doing working class people a big favor when he's not. He just bought their votes to stay out of prison. But why would Democrats go along with this? Certainly they know this is all a scam. Well, because politically they're kind of in a box. They can't oppose it because everybody, it's being reported as no taxes on tips. So they don't want to anger people who make money off of tips and lose their votes forever. So they go along with it and they vote for it. So I understand that. But you know what? They should be saying, in my opinion, what they should do is, yeah, we'll vote for this. It might save a few people a few dollars a year. I mean, it's nothing. So we'll vote for it. But understand that this is a joke. Donald Trump is playing you for fools. You're not going to really feel much impact from this. Explain how this only applies to cash tips. Explain how this is just a joke for Donald Trump to buy votes. But we don't really see that. Anyway, there's more I can get to about this, but I'll save that for another video. Specifically, I want to talk about the MAGAs who are getting royally screwed from Medicaid cuts. And I'll say this since I'm talking about tips. So those people who work on tips, many of them are low income, right? And many of them do not get health insurance from their employers. So they have two choices: either buy their own insurance, which is prohibitively expensive, or they get on Medicaid. And if they're low income, they qualify for Medicaid. Well, the guy they voted for in order to save maybe a couple dollars a year on tips is cutting Medicaid. So even if they do manage to save, I don't know, enough for a cup of coffee on tips, maybe they save that much a year, how much are they losing because the guy they voted for is cutting their Medicaid? And now they don't have friggin' health insurance, or they soon will be without health insurance. But do you think all that money they're saving from not having to pay a couple dollars for the few tips that they actually receive in cash during the year is going to make up for the fact that now they don't have health insurance and they have to buy it for themselves on the open market? As I said, nobody gets screwed harder by Donald Trump than the people who voted for him. Anyway, more to come. Thanks for watching. Talk to you again soon.